Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast.
Welcome to the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. I'm Rhombus Tix, and I'm going to be reading Heir, Sunfire, Chapter 3, The Dr. Marigold Blackwater Show. Humiliation and degradation were an art to the nobles of Interfey, the best tools for keeping the masses in check. It was only natural for Grandfather Fiddleback to use it to control and monitor his heirs. But this nonsense of standing up to bullies and being thrown out of school? Unacceptable. Marigold simply wouldn't tolerate it. She had renamed Michael Sunfire to become Timmy Blackwater. A name like Michael was fit for a prince, since in her book the name Timmy was fit for falling down a well and being rescued by a hyper-intelligent poodle. She could still remember the Grand Council when Grandfather had decided to bring back the old ways. No one had a right to be a prince or a princess simply because they were born, and this nonsense of no one being tested, no. They were sent to Terra, where their memories were wiped, and they had to prove if they were ancient or modern. The irony of being of the ancient faction whilst under the hot light of the studios was not lost on Marigold Fiddleback, broadcast to millions of people. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Marigold Blackwater Hour, where we tell you what to think. The studio audience went wild and cheered. She had only had to use magic a bit at first. Once a few had decided to make her the source of their morality, dozens more had followed by hundreds, then thousands, then millions. Marigold was now regarded as one of the greatest moral voices on the planet. She walked into the audience, taking her microphone with her as she went. I'm sorry to say that the show today will be a bit more personal. This one is very close to home. She looked at poor Timmy. She made sure that she thought of him with his new real name almost all the time. It helped the magic. He had no idea what he was in for as he looked at the edge of the stage, unsure why his aunt had broken her rule and brought him to her show. He was about to find out. My nephew Timmy has been a bad boy, and I thought everyone in America should know it. Timmy, come out here in front of the cameras. Timmy came out and blushed beet red. He was so cute. It would be sad when she had to ritualistically scar him both inside and out, but his father had proven how dangerous the Sunfire line could be. The ancients would take no chances. Beauty was power, and his spirit had to be crushed. It was better than killing him, after all. Timmy, would you like to tell the millions of people out there in the audience, tell them how you screwed up today? He tried to speak. The poor boy was terrified. Even though he had some impure thoughts about his true self, Marigold had done a good job. No friends, no one but her mattered. And here he knew shame. Such a good boy. Timmy, say something. Tell the people in the audience what you did. Normally the audience might turn on her at a moment like this, but she had long since conditioned them into being whatever she wanted them to be. The live audience had long since been mentally plowed and hardened into a fertile field for whatever messed up ideas she had. Timmy waved at the audience and said, Hi. They all cheered. Marigold smiled benevolently. That's right, Timmy. I know you can do more. Will you tell us why you're here? I'm here because I need to. The audience roared their approval. Admit how I screwed up? Good, Timmy. Now you will get an ice cream when you finish. Won't that be nice? Timmy smiled, his long golden locks hiding his face. Gosh, she hated those. Every time she saw him, she wanted to shave them off. They reminded her too much of his real mother. But for now, she had to put up with them since the test had rules, and she couldn't keep this up forever. But she didn't want him to die, no matter how much the test was rigged against him. Timmy said, I screwed up. And how did you do that, Timmy? She spoke with the loving tones of a parent, even if she had to suppress the urge to strike him. No marks. Nothing that might hurt her ratings. He looked at the floor and shuffled his feet like he was 8. I let them give me a swirly. That's right, Timmy. You fought with them, didn't you? She leaned forward, putting her hand under her chin. The audience mirrored the gesture. No. That was a little too strong for her taste. Didn't you? Yes. His voice tapered off, and she could practically see him realigning his thinking to the correct way. Her way. Grandfather's way. And that's what got you suspended. Yes. School is important, isn't it, Timmy? Yes, he nodded vigorously. Then tell the nice people what you did was wrong. I am a screw-up. I'm a bad son, and I should be punished. If you see me, you should tell me how bad I am. Well, now that was interesting, Marigold beamed. Having everyone in America tell him how awful he was, well, that was fun. She still cringed when she thought of his father's rebellion. It was just so wrong. She shuddered when she thought about Timmy's father and betraying Grandfather Fiddleback. She had become the daughter that Grandfather had always wanted. Good, completely loyal, totally aware of how worthless women were, and how ready to punish and was ready to punish his enemies, just like she was punishing Timmy now. The audience joined in, singing, "We love Timmy, we love Timmy." But through the filter of the glamour, what she and Timmy heard was, "We hate Timmy, we hate Timmy," over and over again in a chant that would echo with him for the rest of their life. It was a dirge. It was a holy thing. Such a holy thing was not to be ignored, and she couldn't help but laugh a bit at the idea. She only did it because she loved him. If he wasn't properly crushed, humiliated, and ground under her heel like the serpent he was, then he would threaten Grandfather, and Marigold could never have that. Timmy shrank like a turtle and sat down on one of the chairs usually reserved for cheaters, cheats, crooks, and liars. It was the dark chair, and she was quite proud of it. They cut and went to commercials. She went up, knelt, and smiled at the audience and whispered supposedly soothing reassurances to Timmy. "Do you understand what you did was wrong?" I fought back. "That's right, Timmy. Never fight back. Never stand up for yourself. You are nothing. Repeat it back to me. I am nothing. That's right." And what did the audience sing? "We hate Timmy." That's right, Timmy. Aunt Marigold is the only one who loves you, and I will as long as you acknowledge that you are nothing. Your life depends on it. Do you understand? Timmy nodded and wandered off the stage in a bit of a daze. Marigold watched him walk out, quite pleased with herself. As he slowly limped away, she took out what looked like a rather ugly troll doll, no more than 3 inches high. She snapped her fingers, and the troll doll immediately came to life. "Yes, Marigold, how can I help you?" "Follow Michael." She unfortunately had to use his real name for the enchantment to work properly. "And tell me what he does. Meet me when you can." The troll doll saluted and moved through the shadows as she could. Glamour kept her hidden from the eyes of most Terrans, but there was just enough to make it annoying, so the troll doll kept hidden when she could. Marigold then resumed the rest of her episode. "We're back from commercials. Our next guest needs no introduction, so I'm not going to give him one." She went through the rest of the day enjoying her work. She always had this particular glow about her when she served Grandfather well. That was her purpose. She had no other. She knew what she was now, because she had her whole life before conversion being torn between loyalty to the rest of her family and Grandfather. Though she did know she had always hated the Sun Queen. She couldn't quite put a finger on it. It had always been an instinctive hatred between a mother and her daughter. Her reveries were interrupted by the strongest urging she had ever felt from the troll doll, annoying Marigold, but she knew that it had to be important, due to the fact that she really had no existence except that granted by the one who gave her life. She slowly opened her mind and tuned out the prattle of her publicist. She had so thoroughly groomed that bitch that she would do whatever Marigold liked. "Mistress," the urgent call came. "Yes, what is it?" She had almost called it a troll doll, but giving such things a name gave them independence and power, and Marigold would have none of that. "He is speaking with Tricia." Marigold wanted to ask details, but the subtext was clear. Given what Timmy had told her earlier, she knew that Tricia had been there when he had begun having ungrandfather-like thoughts. "Let me hear." "Your Aunt Marigold sucks." That made Marigold's breath catch in her throat. She had surrounded herself with people who thought and acted just the way she did for so long that she hadn't heard harsh criticism in some time. She found herself hating Tricia. That wouldn't be good for Tricia. Normally she just blocked out toxic people, but when it came to defending her children, she was perfectly ready to make Tricia blocked out from everyone and everything else. "Don't speak about her like that." It was too slow and weak a response for her taste, but she still felt pride in craftsmanship as he did so. "How many people have called you a bad boy since you started school today?" Timmy didn't say anything. "I mean, I get that women like a bad boy, but they do?" That wasn't something that she liked to hear at all. She wanted to send thunderbolts down on both of them. There was a giggle, and then Tricia said, "Yes, they do. though probably not in the way your aunt treats you. Seriously, Tim, do you mind if I call you Tim? I told you, that's not my name. Now Marigold was seriously worried. This could mean the end of everything. He could be killed. Well, what should I call you? I don't know, but that's not my name. Tim, it will do for now. But you are crazy, you know that, right? I'm not the one who goes around telling people that my brother is in prison. My brother is in prison. Tisha sounded indignant. Yes, but you don't need to tell people about it. Actually, I do. Why? Because if he finds out someone hurt me, then anything I do to them is going to be merciful by comparison. I might just look like another sexy pretty face, but I'm protected. My brother, Marigold, couldn't listen to any more. It hurt that Augustus wasn't talking to her anymore. Sure, he was dead, but that didn't mean he had to be so rude. Death was not really the kind of limit in their family that it was to others, but Augustus wouldn't say a thing. In fact, most of their ancestors had stopped talking to her, but Grandfather Fiddleback just said it was because they were planning to do a special surprise for them all when they did, because they were so proud of them. She smiled when she thought about Grandfather. He was so smart. Was there anything that he could do wrong? Annoyingly, something bothered her on the edge of her vision. What was it? Oh, the publicist needed a nod. Marigold nodded. The publicist beamed, curtsied, and left the room. Such a bother. She stood up and gulped. She did not want to have to report this to Grandfather Fiddleback, but she really had no choice. Ever since she had converted, she knew that she had to do what he wanted and nothing else, and he would know. She took a deep breath and stepped through to the other world. She had a report to make. This has been the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. Buy my book, Have Name Will Travel, at Amazon and other markets. RedAnvilCreative.com contains all our podcasts. Copyright 2023.
To fight the forces of evil!
Welcome to the secret commentary at the end of every episode. I'm Rhombus Tix. This has been Chapter 3 of Heir of Sunfire. So, where to begin? I think the most interesting element of this for me is the fact that this actually happened to me, and I'm not going to give details to protect the innocent who were very young at the time. The guilty are condemned enough in other ways, and I won't get into that. But suffice to say that at one point in my life, I actually had people who were near and dear to me in the car turn around and sing, "We hate Rhombus, we hate Rhombus," and it was every time my inner demon tortured me before I left the LDS Church, and even for a few years after, that was one of the things that echoed in my mind. And at this point, it's pretty obvious that my wife and I aren't going to have kids. But if I had kids, I would always be recognizant of the fact that anything you say or do will have an impact that is more lasting than you think it is. When this was done, it was out of frustration when I was being kind of a dick, even if the response was entirely disproportionate to what I was doing at the time. So I am certainly not a parent, and I'm not qualified for the most part to give advice in parenting, even though to a certain degree that's what this entire novel is. You know, if I get hit by a truck and I had kids, I'd want them to read this to avoid being stuck in the LDS Church. And Marigold is, in my observation, very much like my mother was before she left the LDS Church, in the most twisted, toxic version I could create, which is to say that there's parts of my mother and there's parts of other women that I saw as a young child, and their general attitude towards the LDS Church and or / Grandfather Fiddleback. And, the whole notion of wiping the memory of a royal interfaith family member is an homage / mockery of the LDS idea that you existed before this life, and as a part of a test to become a god, your memory is wiped, and you are put in a body that you cannot control, and you have no memory and have no experience, and this is considered a fair test. But when you actually think about it, right, messing with your memory is messing with who you are. And even for the ability to become a god, from an ethical standpoint, it's nasty, right? Now, a member of the LDS Church would say, well, you can't understand God and his ways. And here's the thing. I kind of have to, right? To participate in the LDS Church, or frankly, any other religion, to worship a deity, to devote your life, to make oaths, to take 10% of your income and devote it to this person and their organization, to have faith that you will be raised in the resurrection and your sins will be cleansed, to devote all of your time, talents, and everything that you have or may have to the upbringing of the kingdom of this deity, right? It is absolutely the purview of every sapient being that is asked to worship this being, to examine the behavior of things that they do in written scripture in their name, and things that their servants do in their name as well. And there is only so much that a rational being can take on faith. And the whole point, literally the whole point of this warning fairy tale, is that simply taking things on faith because they were told to you, is unrational and will cost you. It certainly cost me, and I didn't want I didn't want what happened to me to happen to anyone. And to one extent or another, that's kind of what this whole thing is about. So take that with a grain of a dump truck of salt.